Facebook's really probably the best way, or you can just email me at jfmguitarist. It's my initials, James fucking Murphy.
Welcome back! Thanks for joining me again on Misery Point Radio. As always, I appreciate you ignoring that little angel on your shoulder that says, run away now, and instead listening to that little devil, the one that says, stick around, fool. And let me tell you, I promise you'll be glad you did. I know I made you wait an extra week for this one, so I'm gonna make it worth your while. Because today's guest is one of the most recognizable talents in the metal industry. Someone whose stories and experiences can not only provide insight into the history and development of metal as we know it, but also serve as a cornerstone of knowledge and advice. And of course, I'm talking about none other than the one and only Mr. James Murphy. I caught up with James on what turned out to be the 30th anniversary of the release of Spiritual Healing from genre-pioneering Florida band Death, which is considered by many to be a pivotal album in the world of death metal, often being cited as a turning point that marked the transition to which death metal musicians really began to be truly respected and taken seriously as artists. Arguably, of course, but I support that theory. And as much as I said I was not going to go down the often-traveled road of death stories and very personal health issues, James spoke freely and openly about both, providing an in-depth look at his life and his experiences. Of course, we also talked about his role as a producer, session artist, a guest soloist, and we got a surprise announcement, well, surprise to me anyway, about an upcoming project that I'm sure will blow your minds. So, give yourself a little extra time for this one. I know it's long, but really, you don't want to miss out on any of this, I promise you. So, check out this very special double episode and take notes. Many of the answers to your burning questions are, in fact, right here. All right, minions, welcome back to Misery Point Radio. Today we have a very special guest. Some of you might have heard of him. If you haven't heard of him, well, then I'm sorry for your loss. I'm stoked to welcome to the show Mr. James Murphy. James, thank you for taking the time, brother. Definitely appreciate it.
No problem, man. Happy to be with you.
Yeah, so, I guess it sounds kind of strange to say, what's new, considering you and I don't know each other, but, how's things going? You keeping busy in the studio?
I am. I'm pretty busy right now. I have a number of things, on the table at the moment. And it include, everything from some mixing, some mastering, and some guest solo recording that I need to do.
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, I love that. And we'll talk about guest solos as well. That's kind of a cool thing. So you're staying busy enough to pay the rent, it sounds like, anyways.
Yeah. That's the idea. I have cut back on the amount of work that I have taken on in the last almost about 2 years because I started having a particular health issue. I actually took care of it a year ago, finally. I started having some digestive issues, problems with my gallbladder. And almost exactly a year ago, it was a year ago, just a couple of days back, I was in surgery.
Oh, good times.
To have it removed. So, yeah, that thing caused me problems for 2 years prior. And all during struggling with all these problems, I was also, developing my first serious relationship in a long time. And now, she's here. She lives with me now, and we're engaged. And
yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, your medical problems just, you're just getting hit with that shit hammer, aren't you?
I have been. I wouldn't say that I'm being hit with it real hard right now. Someone who has to go through a pituitary tumor, if you know anybody else like that, they'll tell you that they will have problems for the rest of their life that they have to address. Usually you just get some medication and you take it, and you go every once in a while, you get checked up to make sure all the medication is working properly. They'll check certain hormone levels, and they'll do basic, full blood panels to make sure everything's working good. And so for me, with the pituitary being the master gland of the entire endocrine system,
right?
it can throw a lot of things out of whack. And once you have a tumor on it, it's shot. Your pituitary is messed up.
Yeah.
So you have to do a lot. You have to maintain a lot of things and keep an eye on a lot of things. And I'm doing that pretty successfully.
That's awesome.
So I'm not crying about the state of my health. It could always be better. But
well, you look great. You're still with us. You're staying busy. Yeah, you're taking care of it. So, I mean, that's
Absolutely.
awesome. I mean, what are you going to do? You get dealt a hand. You got to play that hand. And, I mean, here it is many moons later. You're still doing your thing. So that's awesome. And, I was kind of thinking about this, as I was kind of doing a little bit of homework and thinking about all of the time that you spent back in the day as a, touring musician, performing musician, recording art, that kind of stuff. And then I think about where you're at now with Safe House and your career as a producer. And you've really actually seems like you've spent as much, if not more time doing what you're doing now than kind of what you initially got known for back in the day.
Yeah, I would say my touring and my primary recording career. And I differentiate my primary recording career.
Because you still do it.
Because I do still record on albums all the time. Mm-hmm. But these days it's more guest appearance. It's 3 categories: guest appearance, hired studio musician as a, not necessarily as a featured guest. Like a featured guest, you do in 1 or 2 solos.
Sure.
If you're hired as a studio musician for an album, you may play on the entire album, but you're just getting paid, to do it. And then, but you're credited and everything like that. And then there's ghost appearances. Ghost appearances are what a lot of producers who are musicians end up doing. When there's, for whatever reason, a musician, a band that can't play a particular part, can't pull it off for whatever reason. Maybe they hurt their hand that week and they got it in a splint, or they, or the bass player, maybe the guitar players want him to play something that's more advanced than he can pull off currently. Whatever the case may be, things happen in the studio all the time.
Sure.
Where someone's sick or something like that, and the schedule can't change, so you end up recording things, and they're not credited. You don't really talk about them. They're not so substantial in material that to the sound or to the quality that it really even matters. Almost who did it.
Right.
We're not talking about solos. We're not talking about featured parts. Just sort of, okay, this part here with 16-note triplets at 180 and the rhythm, the guitar player can't do it right now because he, fell off his riding lawnmower or something,
because life happened,
hit his arm on a garden gnome, when he fell off the lawnmower. I don't know, stuff happens, I've had all kinds of reasons why I've had to play a particular part, on a song or a particular instrument, on an album.
Yeah, there's something to be done. You just got to make sure it's done.
I've been doing, that, guest appearances, studio musician work, where, you're basically a craftsman. You're hired just to, guest appearances, people are hiring you for your art, studio musician stuff. It's more like you're hired for your craft.
Yeah.
And I differentiate between the two, although they are related. I definitely differentiate. We can talk more about that later, but if you want to, then there's this sort of ghost stuff where you just are doing what you got to do in the studio to get stuff done because of whatever reason that may occur.
Sure. Does that happen a lot?
Often enough that I have a category for it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Huh?
I mean, I probably got a stack of CDs in there that high that I'm playing on that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
Because it's just a little part here or there where for whatever reason, the musician wasn't available, wasn't able, or was injured or something,
Sure.
Something like that, or sick or what have you.
And that's just something you just jump in and do it. You don't necessarily have to be asked. You're just like, fuck, let's just get this done, man. Let's make this work for you.
Yeah. Well, it's usually either the artist will suggest it or I'll suggest it. Say, hey, just to get this done, why don't I play this section? I got it here. Show them I can play it. It's great. And I really will only do it when the artist goes, yeah, great idea. Let's do that. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So,
and some things, move the ball forward. You got to move the ball forward.
Well, that's the producer role coming out, really saying, "Hey, this is a project that we've got to make this happen." And so
it's got a start point, it's got an end point, and I would say that I've been guilty in the past, and it has hurt my career. I've been guilty in the past of being a little too indulgent with artists who like to really stretch things out, take a long, long time. They want to play it all even if they can't, or they want to, sometimes I've been indulgent. And when you're indulgent as a producer, if you're too indulgent, stuff doesn't get done on time. And when stuff doesn't get done on time, there's only one person who's going to be under that bus.
Yeah. Yeah. If it rolls into other projects you got scheduled too, that's where it can get kind of hairy.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. I've been in the past, I've been guilty of that. I've gotten better with that stuff. I sort of, you learn as a producer to keep things on schedule.
Sure. Do you find that some bands have a hard time with that? When you see that maybe somebody's either struggling or maybe they're just having an off day and you say, "Hey, listen, here's my solution." Maybe they don't like it. Do you run into that quite a bit?
I can really only recall running into it one time, and it was when I had to suggest to a band, like, "Hey, your drummer isn't ready. I'm not telling you should fire the drummer.
Sure.
But I'm telling you should either A, talk with your label and discuss if you're really dead set on this guy as your drummer, he needs more time to learn the songs." He had plenty of time. We did pre-production, 6 to 8 weeks ago. He had the pre-production results, which included, among many other things that were accomplished in pre-production, one of the work products of the pre-production session was really tight scratch guitar tracks recorded left and right stereo, with a click track, and also to a rough MIDI sketch of the drums.
Okay.
So you just sort of work out the song, you work out the arrangement, you work out all the rhythm parts. Like you just find all the little bugs, like, oh, this guitar player was doing, at 30-second notes, it's hard to tell that the one guy's going 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, and the other guy's going 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, and a big mess, like on the frets, using fret numbers, and you, so like F sharp G or G F sharp back and forth.
Sure.
Standard pitch tuning, you find all those things, you locate all those things. That one should be obvious. I picked kind of a fairly obvious example, but stuff happens. You get stuff sometimes where the guitar players are doing 16th note little and the bass player's like doing a triplet or something like that. You find all those little things and you get them all sorted out. You find a harmony that's bad, you correct it, and you get it all recorded real tight. Scratch guitar, mind you, not final work,
sure.
Final album production, but just scratch guitar. Usually just use a modeler, don't even plug into an amp for it, and a click track, and perhaps a nice MIDI skeleton, which usually have the drummer on hand, and we just tap it out, because we're just working real quick, pre-production, just getting through the songs, making sure everything is cool in the songs. And, you do that and you give that as part of, like I said, part of the work product is click tracks, and a drummer has those for like 6 to 8 weeks out to practice, to not only be practicing the songs with the band, with all the things that were discovered, messed up, that they now know to practice and work on. The drummer himself can also just practice on his own.
Yeah.
Just throw that in his cans or over the PA in the rehearsal room, and, at home with headphones and an electronic kit or whatever they have at home, driving down the road, listening in the car and air drumming, whatever, That's what drummers usually do, and they usually come in really, really super, super prepared when they work with me, because I give them all the tools to be super ready to record the song.
Yeah, no surprises.
And after 6 to 8 weeks of having that, if you show up in the studio and you still cannot play the songs worth crap, that's when you need to have a discussion, and one of a couple of things needs to happen. One, either you need to go back to your label and your management, and you need to discuss about taking another several weeks prior to recording, if it hasn't already been baked in, if the manufacturing time hasn't already been booked by the label, like, oh no, we've booked it, we'll lose money if we lose this slot, we can't, you know, we're already planning, you know, a lot of times at that stage, they're about to record the labels. If there's a label, it's already planning, it's marketing, it's already spending money, it's putting money down to reserve manufacturing time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So all kinds of things happen. So that's usually not a realistic option, but it's one, especially one for unsigned bands that are bands whose labels are, you know, are not so on the ball, you know, necessarily. That's a bad thing, I suppose. But
sure.
But you can do that. You can take more time, give the guy another chance, come back in. It messes everything up. I got to reschedule my whole life. It's a really terrible option. It's terrible for a lot of reasons. My schedule's screwed. The label schedule's probably screwed.
Right.
All the management's plans are going to go to hell. So I would not say that it is actually really almost ever a viable option, but you got to tell them, hey, you got that choice, which is a very bad and probably will get naysayed by everybody else
involved. Yeah.
Or we can bring in a ringer. We can bring in a studio musician who will play the drums. Then your drummer will need to learn how to play them for live.
Yeah.
Or C, you got to replace your drummer.
Oh.
We can get a studio drummer right now, and you can find a drummer that'll be able to play that, or you find a drummer right now who will be able to play this stuff right now. There's very few guys like that. They're mostly all working as studio musicians.
Sure.
You know, studio drummers a lot because they have that ability. And you know, I've had to do that. I've had to sit a band down and have that hard conversation with them. Like, your drummer's just going to be completely incapable of pulling this material off. He's absolutely failing. And we spent all day. He hasn't gotten one take of any of the songs that's even remotely usable. We can't even edit it and fix it. It's so jumbled, so messed up. He's so far off base. So you have to make a move. And ultimately, they decided to bring in a studio guy, and then they really hit it off with the studio guy, and ended up, you know, hired him for a while.
Cosmic twist of fate.
Yeah. So that happens. It does happen, and you know. And where I'm at in your original question, if I roll back to what you asked me originally, was, you know, where am I in my playing career scheme of things? And I'm in that sort of studio musician, guest musician, ghost musician sort of thing that a lot of producers who are players, you know, also find themselves, you know, doing quite a bit of. My primary recording and touring career took place from 1987 to 2000, I guess, when The Gathering was released or whatever.
Yeah.
That was 99 or 2000. And I think I toured into 2000 with them. So from 87 to 2000, it was like 13 years. Meanwhile, I've been doing the production thing, you know, so up to about 2000, I've been doing the production thing exclusively for about 19 years, almost 20 years. And I did it for a few years before while I was in bands. You know, pretty much my entire time in Testament, I was, you know, working as an engineer, first as an intern and whatever, learning the craft, and then started working as an engineer and all that. So probably have been at about realistically about 25 years as an engineer, producer, you know, mixer, and about 23, 24 years as doing mastering as well. But yeah, 13 years recording and touring, and
more
there,
so.
There was some overlap,
right?
But more so, I'm close to double the time on being a producer.
That's crazy. Do you miss playing shows at all?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been 20 years since I played a show, but it has been probably about 14 or 15. Whenever the Roadrunner United, I think 30th anniversary show was at that big theater off Times Square in New York. It was that big. They put out the album and everything. It was 30th or 25th anniversary, I forget, of Roadrunner Records, and they made a big deal about it. And they had an album that had alumni from the label playing on songs together in cool little groups and stuff like that. It was really, really cool. And we did a concert for that, and I played that. I played, I think, 3 songs that night.
What songs did you play, if you remember?
Curse of the Pharaohs, Alice in Hell, Curse of the Pharaohs from Merciful Fate,
yeah.
Alice in Hell by
Annihilator,
and Abigail, King Diamond.
King Diamond, yeah, awesome.
I think like on Alice in Hell, I actually played that with Jeff from Annihilator was
Oh man,
on guitar. But when I did Curse of the Pharaohs, it was me and Andreas Kisser.
oh Sepultura, yeah,
and when I did Abigail, I think it was me and Dino Cazares.
Man, that's just an all-star jam band going on there.
Yeah, there's a DVD of it, man.
Oh, that's killer.
Check it out. It's called Roadrunner United.
I'm gonna check that out. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So obviously, I mean, your work with as a producer, as an engineer. I mean, this is you. This is James Murphy's career path from here till whenever. But obviously, you kind of made your name, back in those heydays. When I think back to the 80s and 90s, for me, I think that was very formative for a lot of musicians, because that's really when the scenes were exploding. Bay Area thrash and, the Tampa scene, and then the New York hardcore scene. And then, even where I'm from in Seattle, we had, the tail off part of that started going from like metal into more the quote unquote alternative-y kind of stuff. And, bands like Nevermore and Sanctuary and Faustus and all those guys. But I think that era for me was really critical in kind of defining the music scene that I think kind of still exists in all those areas. And, definitely you were kind of a part of it. What do you think when you think about that time frame? Does that ever cross your mind that, man, it was just kind of a crazy time and a lot's happened since then?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thoughts like that kind of cross my mind every single day, especially, with social media.
Love it or hate it.
People post a lot of, remember, like I can't log into my feed without seeing, this album's, was released on this day in 19, whatever it was.
Right.
And, blah, blah, blah. And it's the 20th anniversary. I believe it is tomorrow. And the notices and photos and everything have already started appearing on Facebook today. Tomorrow, I believe it is tomorrow. Perhaps it's today, but I think it's tomorrow, is the 30th anniversary of Death Spiritual Healing.
Yeah.
And it's getting a lot of attention already on social media. My feed is filled with various sort of JPEGs and stuff, commemorating the 30th anniversary of Spiritual Healing. And, you get a lot of messages from people. So it's almost like you kind of relive those times, every week, another album, especially when you played on as many albums as I did.
Sure.
And, so it's an interesting thing. And I remember, a couple of years ago in 2017, it was the 30th anniversary of my first like professional live show really ever, which was at the Hammersmith Odeon in London, where I played with the band Agent Steel.
Agent Steel, yeah.
Yeah. And my touring career actually started in the 80s in 87. But my recording career also kind of did, because my first album that I ever played on was Spiritual
Healing. Yeah.
Yeah. We recorded it in 1989. It was summer to, I would say in fall. Starting in the fall or so of 89, we started recording that. And it came out in February of 90. So,
yeah. It's funny, a lot of those bands, a lot of those albums from back in the day, they still have like lasting power. I mean, you look at how many years it's been since, say, Spiritual Healing came out, or, Cause of Death, or Disincarnate, Dreams of a Carrying Kind. These things have been around for a while, and people still are finding them. It's new for a lot of people. They've just never really gone away. It kind of blows my mind. It's awesome.
Yeah. Every time, every time I turn around, a new, I get contacted by fans every day on social media, and sometimes they're guys that are in their 50s that were around back, that were young back when, 30 years ago when these albums started coming out. And, but so often they're really young guys in their teens or early 20s,
Yeah. It's just
that's pretty cool.
A testament to the staying power of some of the OG projects out there. I was talking to,
exactly.
I was talking to Rick Ross actually a few months back. I was at that Orlando show for the Massacre reboot, and we sat down out at the back of Will's Pub where the show was at. And coincidentally, not even knowing it, you look at the back of this place, and there's a shrine to two musicians there on there. One musician was Peter Steele from Typo Negative, and then the other was Chuck, right? And so
right.
Rick looks at that and he goes, "Man, everywhere I go," he's like, I can't escape it. It's everywhere." So good or bad. I mean, that's just, I guess, part of the legacy, and you guys both being part of that legacy is pretty crazy. In fact, didn't you guys go hang out during that time frame? I want to say I was talking to Scott from False Prophet, and he said you guys all went out and had lunch or something like that.
Yeah, we did. Rick wasn't there, but Scott and a couple of the other guys from that were around it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I went and had lunch with them. I've gone and not that long ago, a few years back, I played a guest solo on something that had both Rick and Terry on it. Rick and Terry Butler. I think it might have been a Massacre thing. Damn, I can't even remember. I play so many guest spots that I sometimes forget like what I actually played on. I think I think Massacre did a cover, and I played a guest solo on it. I went to Orlando and hung out in the studio with Terry and Rick. I think Terry picked me up, and I went there and hung out with those guys, and I played a guest solo, and then later on they took me home. That was just a few years back, I suppose.
Awesome. Well, you kind of became really known, I think, for a signature sound. Like, there is definitely a James Murphy flavor, if you will, to your solos and your sonic kind of qualities. At least as far as the studio magic goes, kind of really cool harmony parts and some layers and some really kind of tasteful tremolo stuff, not like dive bomby or anything, but you've got something that's very identifiable. How would you describe that sound?
Well, I would say in terms of referring to the harmonies in any way, shape, or form as studio magic, that really is only true in the sense that in order to have those harmonies, I had to overdub.
Sure, yeah.
And that is obviously
you're playing both
something
tracks
you do
though.
in the studio. But yeah, I often get asked, like, dude, what harmonizer did you use on, Spiritual Healing or whatever? And I just like, this one.
Yeah. Track 1, track 2.
Just hold up my fingers. So like that one, I recorded the first part, and then we armed a new track, and I recorded the second part.
Yeah.
I just played it. And I'm like, oh, really? I thought it was an Eventide or whatever, because it's so tight. I'm like, oh, well, it's not really that tight. It's a human. It's a human level of tight. It's not that robotic tight that you can hear, when you actually listen to someone playing with an Eventide, But yeah, I just practiced a lot. I practiced a lot back then.
There's a definite, harmonies. I'm a fan of them, and I mean, yes, they can be overdone to the point where you're just fucking sick of them. But I actually really like them. But the tones, the kind of the how everything kind of plays out. You know what it reminds me of? Not within the same industry, of course, but like Tom Scholz had a very identifiable guitar tone with Boston, and everybody was always like, "Oh my God, how do you make that sound?" And he's like, "I just play and stuff happens, and it's all your fingers and whatnot." But I think part of it is you can listen to a passage and go, okay, cool, that sounds like James Murphy. I guess, like it or not, there is definitely some kind of an identification that you're associated with there.
Yeah, I suppose that to the extent that I've been aware of it consciously myself without people telling me about it, I have, to that same extent, tried my damnedest to squash it.
Okay.
I'm like, and probably those attempts were ill-advised, and I'm talking about in years past, way in years past, when I was really getting my chops together, when I was learning how to be a musician, when I became aware that, like, all my solos sort of have this certain signature flair, you can always sort of tell it's me. I wanted to squash that. My instinct was I need to learn some different techniques. I need to try to do some things a different way. I wanted to squash that. But the reality is that it was something completely out of my control. It's just something about the way I bend, the way I have vibrato, and the innate way in which I make certain note choices against certain harmonic backdrops, and I can't help but realize that it has accrued to my benefit over the years, in terms of, people just knowing who the hell I am. And, when I look back at, some of my favorite guitar players, yeah, I can tell it's them within a couple of notes. You can tell it's them. And people say that about me too. And I'm like, wow, okay. You can tell it's Angus Young in a couple of notes. You can tell you can tell it was Randy Rhoads in a couple of notes. You can tell it's Eddie Van Halen, just a couple of notes,
absolutely,
et cetera. And I'm not putting myself in the ranks of those players, playing wise, but hey, if I'm as recognizable to people as they are to people, that can't be a bad thing. And I used to, when I was, early on, used to think it was, but I've definitely learned better over the years. You grow up and you learn, like, no, this is not a bad thing that I have it. Having your own signature style that people can recognize is absolutely a great thing, provided you don't become super boring and repetitive. Like, oh, we can always tell it's him because he always does the exact same thing every solo.
Sure.
And if you can avoid that, then and you can maintain your own sonic identity doing that, and that'll probably work out good for you. And it did for me. So,
do you think that by the time you had gotten to the point where you were in death, that you had already kind of started to really hone in on that style that you became known for?
You know what? This will probably blow some people's minds. It blows my mind thinking back on it a little bit.
Blow our minds.
I had no idea that I was capable of what I played on that album until I did it.
Oh.
I didn't have any idea. Because, I had, I had toured with this band Age of Steel. That was a couple of years earlier.
Right.
Probably a little over 2 years earlier, I toured Age of Steel. And, I had to play a bunch of songs, which for me were basically cover songs.
Okay.
I was trying to play the solos of a guitar player who was much better than me. And I'm talking about Mr. Bernie Versailles.
Okay. From
Age of Steel, who he's had some health problems in recent years. I hope he's doing much better. But Bernie was a phenom. I mean, he was absolutely amazing dude, amazing guitar player. And he's the one whose spot I filled when I joined Age of Steel for that Europe and UK tour in '87. And the album that he played on, that he played all those great solos on, was the one that was coming out on the tour and we were supporting. And so I had to learn all those solos. And I know I didn't learn them well. I can listen back to the old recordings and go, God, man, I sucked. I didn't hold a candle to Bernie, But it really, everything that I did up to that point and after that always pushed me to get better and better and better. I mean, after doing that, after getting that gig with Age of Steel and doing that tour, I spent a couple of years just teaching guitar and occasionally going on the odd audition.
Yeah.
And, I never actually landed any of the auditions, I was mostly just teaching, but through teaching and through trying and failing, I just got better and better and better. And I had never done a full album of original music before and played and had to come up with solos for each and every song. I had never done that. I'd recorded a little bit on a 4-track at home and I made up this little part and I came up with a little solo part over it, but it was always just nothing that big of scale as Spiritual Healing. So, the circumstances sort of lifted me up. Now, I had done a lot of the work, the preparation without knowing it, to be able to take advantage of the push that the urgency to get this done and do it well gave me. You find yourself in a position where there's an urgency to get things done and, on a schedule and do them well, and you're not prepared, you're probably going to crash and burn, Luckily, I had done the preparation, so I was able to continue that and rise to the occasion of that album and what it was to me and my mind and my heart, what I had to do, what I had to accomplish.
So it was more of a necessity thing.
It was a necessity. I had to come up with better work than I had ever shown myself even that I was capable of. And fortunately, I did it. And it wasn't hard. That's the thing. It's just, even just from the first day, like I had never written music I wrote one song with the Age of Steel guys. They wanted to try to do a new song live. they asked me if I had any riffs, and this is in 1987 in this little rehearsal place in Tampa where we were practicing for that tour. I just pulled a riff out of my ass, and just we turned it into a song in just a little while, and we actually performed it on that tour. But that was the only time I had ever written anything with anybody. And I think the other guy might have contributed one riff to it or something like that, but I wrote the majority of it. And but going into Things with Death in the summer of 1989, after I had gotten the gig and I showed up for the first rehearsal/writing sessions for Spiritual Healing, it was almost like the same thing. I was there. I was with the guys. We practiced. They taught me the 4 songs that were already written for Spiritual. And then they said, "Yeah, we want to write 4 or 5 more tunes. Do you have any ideas?" I said, and it just immediately just started flowing from there. I just started, again, just pulling riffs out of my butt. What about this one? And I just would make it up on the spot usually. And they liked it, So it just flowed easily. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know how. I don't know. I guess learning all this stuff that I had learned to that point, learning so many other songs, learning other band songs, Agent Steele's repertoire, which was at that point was 2 albums and an EP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and having to do all this stuff. It just set me up for being able to, and I guess just my own innate, creativity allowed me to be able to do it. And so when it came time in the studio to come up with solos, I pretty much wrote the solos there in the studio.
Okay.
I would play through the part a number of times and start coming up with ideas until it gelled into something solid, and then we'd record it. And I forget about how much time I took for each solo to get my ideas together. But Scott wouldn't even record me until I had probably played through the solo 20, 30 times.
Scott Burns?
Gathering ideas. Yeah. Scott Burns, yeah. Gathering ideas. And once I had my ideas together, he wouldn't even stay in the room after a while. He would go out and have himself a little break. And I just operated the 2-inch machine with the big controller of the 2-inch machine. He actually would set it on shuttle for me, so it would just repeat.
Constantly
just play the part, rewind, play it again, and now I'll try these ideas and put them together, and it just worked. It just worked like that. After each solo, after I said, "Okay, Scott, I'm ready to record it. I got my ideas together," we'd do a couple of takes until I nailed it, and it would be done. And I'd listen back and think, how the hell did I pull that off?
Do you map them out like note for note, or is this something that you kind of get a general phrasing idea and you just kind of wing it?
No, it's kind of general phrasing idea. Yeah, general phrasing idea. Like sometimes I know, I definitely want to do this melody here.
Right.
And I'm probably going to want to harmonize it, but I wouldn't work that stuff out in advance. Or exactly how it would fall, I didn't really know, but I would put ideas in order. I like that idea to open it because, a good solo to my mind, and I knew this even back then, possibly because I had read it somewhere, one of my idols saying this, that a good solo is almost like a little story. It has an intro, it builds, it has a lull, like a valley, and then it climbs a mountain, and then it has a crescendo, and then it sails out. You know what I mean? And into the sunset.
3 acts in catharsis.
Yeah, if you can pull that off, you probably got a good solo. So I tried to put together solos in a way that whatever ideas I had when I was just jamming over it, that I would try to take those ideas and order them in a way that they kind of did that. And then as I recorded it, hey, I didn't have it worked out exactly note for note, so whatever little happy accidents happened along the way, like things just flowed together a certain way, or I did something I never did before, but it worked. We just kept all that, of course.
Yeah. Awesome.
And, so it blew, looking back at it, I'm just like, man, at that point, you got to realize it was 1989 and I had started playing guitar seriously in 1985. Probably in 1983, 84, I knew a couple of open chords on an old acoustic my dad had. But I didn't start learning how to play guitar properly until 1985.
Oh.
And by 1989, I was in the studio recording that Spiritual Healing, which I still listen back to, and I think, how the hell did I do that? I'd only been playing guitar about 4 years.
That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. Yeah, that's a very compressed time frame to go from, point A to point B. And then not only that, but that really kind of became something that you just are now known for, like, forever in the history of ever.
Yeah. It was definitely weird.
Yeah, developing kind of, I guess, that signature and that style, and then you moved on from there and went on to, of course, playing Obituary and Disincarnate and whatnot. Obituary was not necessarily so much of a collaboration; you just kind of went in there and learned some stuff.
Yeah. With Chuck, I wrote music together with him.
Right.
4 of the songs on Spiritual Healing I co-wrote.
Yeah.
Which is half of the songs on the album. With Cause of Death, those guys already had everything written,
right,
and pretty well recorded as far instrumentally. John wasn't done with vocals at all, I don't think, but instrumentally it was largely done. I know the bass wasn't quite finished yet. Frankie hadn't laid his bass in, or at least not all of it. And but I came in. But this is the thing: Chuck hated whammy bar. I'll let you figure out. I'll let you put 2 and 2 together why he hated whammy bar.
I've heard the stories.
He hated whammy bar. So I don't know if you've ever taken notice. There's really no whammy bar on Spiritual Healing at all. Certainly not Chuck. His guitars didn't even have.
No, he didn't even have a tremolo on his. Yeah.
Yeah, mine did, but because I knew Chuck was very anti-whammy, I just took my bars out and I put them away. I was just that way. I'm just not even.
It's not even a thing.
Tempted.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even tempted to reach for it, and so it was a cool limitation that was put on my expression that actually fed me to come up with more ways to become creative. So I think it actually really helped. Now, it's not true to say there's absolutely no quote unquote bar on Spiritual Healing.
Right.
And actually on the titled song, there's what Chuck referred to as a grinder. It's when you just hit the low, the low E string and it's go, and he called them grinders.
Okay.
So there's a big old grinder. I think it's either right before the solos start or between mine and his solos. It's sort of like it's just there. It's just a big old grinder. And the thing is, Chuck's guitars didn't have bars at all, so he couldn't do it. And so he asked me to record it. Oh, dude, you should just do a big old grinder here. I was like, yo, you sure? Because in my mind, I'm like, I thought you hated whammy bar. But it worked. It was a good idea, and it really, really worked. But because I had put my bars away, I didn't even know where they were. I had lost track of them. I was like, shit, I don't even have them here at the studio. Scotty went into the tech room there where they worked on things there and grabbed a screwdriver. And I took a Phillips head screwdriver and I stuck it down in the hole where the whammy bar would normally screw in,
right,
or pop in, as the case may be. And I just stuck the screwdriver down in the hole, and it was a little Phillips head screwdriver, and went, so the only whammy bar on Spiritual Healing isn't even actually whammy bar. It's a Phillips head screwdriver.
There you go. There's your exclusive drop for you guys on the secret sauce.
Yeah. So to bridge that over to what we were talking about with the difference between doing it with Death and coming in on the Obituary album where everything was written. Yeah, I didn't have the freedom to contribute in that way, but Obituary did not have the objection to whammy bar that Chuck had. They were not only very open to it, they were very much predisposed to like it.
Yeah.
They really thought it was cool. So I was unfettered. I found my bars, I put them back on my guitars, and I used bar. Yeah. In fact, I got to say, probably on that album, it wasn't even one of my guitars. Unfortunately, when I had gotten a couple of guitars while I was in Death through a BC Rich endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Chuck decided to keep those guitars when I left the band.
Oh.
So I entered Obituary not even owning a guitar. And I contacted BC Rich, and they were a little bit aghast. They were kind of like, "What?
He kept them?
We gave those to you, man. But it wasn't worth pursuing. They,
Sure.
They said, it isn't worth the the drama that it could cause. And I said, yeah, you're right. We'll just send you some new guitars. So they got the process going to sending me some new guitars, but because I had to record and I didn't have a guitar, Mike Davis from Nocturnus, he was the guitar player in Nocturnus at the time, he came by and brought me, I think it was like a Charvel, this blue Charvel that he had. I think everyone imagines that I played that album with a black BC Rich Warlock, right? Because that's what they saw me playing on tour most of the time in support of that album. That's the main guitar that I played. And so when I tell people, no, it was a blue Charvel Strat, and they're like, what? I never even saw you with that guitar. Like, well, most people didn't. I just used it in the studio. But he had the bar, and I was able to use it, use the bar as I saw fit, and get expressive with it. Because I was never really kind of the guy to do the full-on Kerry King with the whammy bar, I used it more expressively, I think. And sure, I would do harmonics and work the bar, but I tried to do it to make a creepy vibe, not to, Slayer out.
Yeah, not a means in and of itself.
Yeah.
So I was curious, about that. So did you ever really consider yourself, when you think back, these bands you've played in, an album here, a couple albums there, did you ever really feel like a part of the band as much as you did with Death with other bands? Maybe with Testament or... Well,
I mean, there's only 3 bands that I was actually a member of. Well, 4 bands that I've been a member of. I was a member of Death. I was a member of Obituary. I was obviously a member of Disincarnate.
Right, of course.
And I was a member of Testament.
Okay.
And, Testament actually lasted the longest. I mean, I was in Testament altogether. I was in Testament over a course of like 6 years, something like that. Three albums. One of them being live, but, Low and Live at the Fillmore and The Gathering. So yeah, I very much felt a part of things with Testament. I wrote some music with Testament. I was, fully a member of the band at the time. Obituary, I would have to say, of all, and obviously I felt like a member of my own band.
Of course,
this is mine. And I would say Obituary, I felt the least like really secure in, and the reason being was that the day that I joined, they told me, I said, well, the reason why we're looking for a guitar player is because our original guitar player from the first album, Alan
West,
he just, he's having, I guess he's got a girl. I think they were having a baby, and he was scared of what was going to happen career-wise. He didn't know whether Obituary was going to be viable economically for him, and he wanted to do the responsible thing and, get a job with
money,
reliable pay and benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So he went to go do that. And those guys were really bummed about it. He was their bro. He was 100%, their guy. And, they had come up together, and I was this outside dude who was really nothing like them. I mean, I was from Florida like them. I was from Florida, but I had lived a very much outside Florida life because I was a military brat. So I lived 6 years in Germany. I lived in New York. I lived in California. I lived all over the place. So I wasn't, they're very proud. They love to, they call themselves the redneck death metal, I think. And,
yeah, that's their
cool,
brand.
and that's their thing. I never was that guy. I didn't even partake of the herb anymore. I quit in high school, and I was very much not, I was never that guy that fit in great with them on a personal level. We could be friendly, absolutely, but I didn't have the same interests by and large, except, me and John and Donald, and I think everyone else in the band, we were all big Stevie Ray Vaughan fans, and that, that was a cool thing, but that was it. We weren't the kind to hang out and bro down. So I'm sure to them, I sort of seemed like a real uptight, I was uptight, just at the time, I never really was secure in the band. I wasn't really part of things. They told me in the very, very first day, I guess, to get back around to what I originally was trying to say. They told me that very first day, Alan is our boy, and if he ever wants to come back, we will probably take him back.
Sure.
And as soon as the band was actually going pretty successful and was actually earning money, I already started to think, you know what? Alan's going to see this. and he's going to want to get back.
He's going to want a piece of it.
He probably thought this would all Yeah, he was afraid that it would all disappear and come to nothing, and and he didn't want to eat it, because he was building a family.
Sure.
And I think that possibly once he realized that, oh, wow, this is actually viable. They're going out and they're earning money. He wanted to come back, and I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I don't blame him even a little bit. I would have been the same. I would have been like, let me come back, I helped build this, let me come back.
Anybody making money in that business is remarkable. I mean, it's just, as you know, so very challenging. There's so much stuff behind the scenes that happens. But and you mentioned that, so when you were out and then you were down the road, you playing with Testament, that you'd put a pretty good chunk of time in there. I noticed that like Low and The Gathering had really kind of a different quality. I'm a huge Testament fan, but those songs on those albums were a little slower and a little heavier, and there was a lot more kind of a different vibe to it. They still had their, fast shreds and stuff like that, but that was the first thing I noticed. And did you have anything to do with kind of that? Did you notice that there was a little bit of change in direction on that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that they were going in that direction really anyway. I think possibly the move towards heavier that they did even after Low might have been partially influenced by stuff that I brought to the table in terms of what I listened to and what I liked and what I came from and stuff. I know Eric started checking out a lot of stuff that I was, that I came from and stuff. So maybe it influenced him to start checking out more death metal, and then ultimately to start checking out even black metal, which he did as well.
Well, I was going to ask you if there was ever a conversation about you getting involved in Dragon Lord, and not to go down a rabbit hole, but
No, not at all. That was always just sort of Eric's thing away from Testament.
Right.
So he didn't really want any of the Testament guys. Of course, he ended up with guys. He had guys that ended up playing in Testament, like DiGiorgio
right.
and his cousin Derek, and and all those guys. Both of those guys, great friends. I love those guys.
There was definitely that you could tell that there was a point where they were really exploring, heavier options. Chuck had started really kind of getting more into some of the death metal vocals, started coming out a little bit more, and there was kind of a different sound to the guitars that I was always quite the fan of.
I was just going to say that my primary writing contribution to Low in particular was not even the heaviest song by a long shot on the album, and people probably think that my primary contribution to that was the song Hail Mary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, they were definitely headed in that direction. And I think probably their choice of me was informed a little bit by their desire to move into a bit heavier direction after Alex's departure.
Right.
Because I think he might've been a factor holding that back, perhaps. And that's kind of what I was led to believe at the time. Apologies to Alex if that's not true, but that is what I was given to understand at the time.
I think that's what's been put out to the world.
Okay, yeah. So they wanted to do that. They wanted to move in that direction, and so their choice of me was informed by that. And then, in a sort of knock-on effect, their choice of me then led to more exposure to that kind of stuff because of me.
Sure.
And more, and just kept and fed it even further. So it was a sort of happened in sort of a symbiotic, sort of organic, natural way rather than me driving it. I wasn't driving it. I was a factor. I was part of the engine, but I wasn't the primary motivating factor.
Well, you spent a good chunk of time there, so I would like to think that in some capacity your presence was more than just I'm the Alex Skolnick replacement guy. I'm really kind of helping to contribute to the overall sound of this band, and those are two fantastic albums. I heard a story. I don't know if it's true. Maybe you can confirm it or deny it, whichever. But I heard that during the time you were in Testament, you had another studio. It's different than the one you have now. And somebody broke in and burglarized it. Is that true?
Yeah, it was towards the end of my time in California, and it was at the end of my time in Testament, because I started becoming sick because of the tumor that I had.
Sure.
It started really manifesting its side effects very obviously already by 1999. And I had it for a couple more years before it was taken out. But it was already having terrible side effects on me in 99. So bad that I only remember portions of that year,
Right.
and I don't remember any of the year 2000. Year 2000 is a loss to me.
Yeah.
I know I did some shows with Testament during that time, but I can barely remember anything about them. I had to ask Steve. I was just, God, was I even playing worth a crap?
Oh, man.
You know, and so I asked DiGiorgio, and he goes, "No, yeah, you were playing fine, Jimmy." He calls me Jimmy.
Jimmy,
He's like
huh?
one of the only people in the world, the only person who calls me Jimmy in the world. No, Jimmy, you were playing fine. Yeah, you're playing great. He said, "I like to stand on your side because you're always really tight." I'm like, okay, cool. At least I wasn't, sucking up a storm.
Right.
But I don't remember that year, man. I really don't. I've seen photos from that year, and I'm like, with me in them, and I'm like, I don't remember that, at all. No recollection. But it was a strange thing. And here's the thing: when a tumor starts pressing on your brain, and you don't have health insurance, so you're not getting regular checkups, and you have no family in the area you're living. You only have people you're working with and some casual friends. Those people can react only in so many ways. You know what I mean? Like, they're not your family.
Right.
They're not actually responsible for you. They can't take you to a doctor. You know what I mean? They got their own issues to worry about. So the thing is, right about that time, there was a big meth craze going on in that area. Now I quit. I smoked pot in high school. I quit after high school. I haven't done any drugs since then. I don't do any pills. I don't snort anything. I don't do anything. I never have. Certainly no intravenous, nothing. I don't smoke anything. And I haven't since high school, when, in fact, the only things I ever smoked were marijuana and hash. And I lived in Germany, so hash was more common than actual weed at the time. So their only really thought that they could think of was like, wow, Murphy must have started doing meth or something, because he's going downhill. Something's happening with him. This guy was always on the ball, always prepared, always on top of things, and he's just losing it. And what was happening was I started losing my memory, started having bad memory issues, started having massive fatigue issues. I didn't know what caused it. Everyone around me assumed I must have started doing some kind of drugs, possibly meth or crank or whatever. I don't know the difference.
Sure.
I don't know the terminology for all the drugs that were available at the time. It's sort of an understandable reaction,
Yeah.
They all kind of stepped back from me, and without getting into ultra long details of what happened, even after once my family managed to get me back to Florida, I'll just very skim across the fact that even they thought, for a particular reason, they also thought that I had been on drugs. And they even stepped back a little bit. So, as that stuff started happening to me in California, you start losing everything. You start losing track of things you loaned out, and people just keep them because you're not asking for it back. People realize you're goofy and that you can't remember things, and that you're falling asleep left and right. So they just, they're at your pad and like, hey, you didn't even remember I was here. You just walk out with it. So you just start losing things. And then eventually, as your memory goes, you forget to show up for work. You forget to, and work for me was there. I was right there. It's just my studio. That was work for me. But you forget to, you don't answer the door for clients because you're in a half of a coma, in the other room, sleeping, 18 hours a day. And you lose everything. And eventually, your apartment, your nice loft apartment with all your music gear in it, 30 guitars and this, that, and the other, that hasn't already grown legs and walked off, gets snagged up by your landlord and eventually auctioned off. So, I lost everything because it happened to me so gradually that I didn't even know anything was wrong with me. I was oblivious. I couldn't put two and two together. people around me, the only thing they could put together was that I must be on drugs. So they just scattered, and I lost everything. And I eventually did get back to Florida. I recovered a few items. I would say I recovered several things, and there was one guy who was very nice enough to pretty much rescue my vinyl collection, which was about 2,000 strong. He rescued that whole thing and shipped it back to me.
Man, that's awesome.
On a truck. Yeah, it was very awesome of him. And hey, it is what it is. I lost,
Yeah.
You lose everything, and you rebuild, and I rebuilt.
Yeah. It's and so it wasn't a matter of somebody just one day broke in and stole all your stuff. This was a process that had been going on for a while.
It was a process. Yeah. It was a process. Certain things grew legs and walked away while I still had possession of the loft studio.
Right.
Everything else went once I lost possession of it.
Sure. And at that point, when it became known that there was kind of something else going on, did anybody come back at you and say, "Hey, listen, sorry that I thought the worst about you. Sorry, I jumped to that conclusion." Yeah,
lots of apologies, and some very surprisingly, a couple completely unrepentant assholes.
Oh.
That I had to go after.
Oh wow.
And I would say fairly successfully with one of them, and with two of them, and not with another, because there was just not enough evidence. But you can only do what you can do.
Yeah. Well, you did rebuild, and I was curious if, I don't know, the origin of Safe House production, was it at all tied to that era that you said, now I've got this new space, this is just mine, everything's good? How did you kind of come up with that name for that?
Part of it was exactly what you're saying. It's out here, it's in the countryside, it's a residential studio that I've got built out here now. Clients come and they sometimes stay for a week or two, record. And it's definitely safe. I've got lots of family nearby, and lots of various lifelong friends, and I have doctors and stuff now, and so everything's a little, so it's definitely part of what you say. The other part of it is just I've always been a big fan of sort of spy movies, espionage movies, things of that nature.
Cool.
And they always go back to the safe house after the operation, or if things go sideways, on the cover's blown and things go sideways, they run to the safe house, sort of that. So
awesome. Do you have like secret compartments in your studio, or like a trap door you can just drop down the floor if like somebody comes by and you don't want to talk to them? Hit the fucking trap door button and away you go.
No, not at all. But it's secluded enough that people don't really just stop by without being. I've never had anyone just stop by unannounced at this location, but in California, I absolutely did.
The Jehovah's Witnesses don't stop by and try to save your soul when you're in the middle of a session.
Jehovah's Witnesses do. The quick way to get those people off them off your back and to get them to go away, and you go, "Oh, hey, brothers, sisters, whatever. You don't want to talk to me. I don't want you to get in trouble. I've been disfellowshipped," and they split.
Oh, that's crazy. So
tell them that you were disfellowshipped, and they split,
and away they go. There you go. That's a life lesson from James Murphy right there.
They don't even try to hand you their tracts or anything. They just beat it.
That's amazing. So
they're not allowed. Yeah, they're not allowed to talk to you if you've been disfellowshipped.
My theory then of answering the door either A, in my underwear, or B, with my death metal shirts that have like pentagrams and inverted crosses on them, that doesn't seem to work either. So yeah, I'm gonna have to try yours next time.
No. Just tell them you were disfellowshipped. It's the J-Dubs version of being excommunicated from the Catholic Church.
Right. Oh, yeah. Amazing.
Sorry,
So, Speaking of getting back to the studio, then, do you find yourself these days? You brought up the 2-inch tape earlier. I was gonna bring that up again because that's the era that I come from, with the 2-inch apexes and the reels and the big monster boards that these studios used to have. Do you find yourself really just kind of in the digital realm for the most part today? I mean, Pro Tools is obviously a thing, and mixing in the box is obviously a thing. Is that really where you're at home at these days?
No, I don't mix in the box. I break out to a lot of outboard. I use a lot of outboard, some vintage, some more modern, but I use a lot of physical hardware.
Awesome.
both analog and digital that I break out. So I never mix completely in the box with just plugins. It's certainly possible, and it's a way of doing things that has its advantages. One, in that you don't have to have a lot of spend a lot of money on a bunch of expensive outboard equipment and the cabling to hook it all up. And another advantage it has is total recall. Total recall of a mix just by virtue of opening the file. You don't have to go recall presets on outboard gear, recall settings, physical settings on analog gear by looking at recall sheets and matching where the knob was set. You don't have to do any of that. So that it has its advantages. But I also, obviously I believe that working with a hybrid, sort of setup where you're doing some things in the box, but you're breaking out to a lot of analog gear and even external digital gear also has its advantages, because there's just certain sounds and certain things that you can't get in the box.
Yeah.
Certain things they can, it can be mimicked, but it's not exactly the same.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of studios with tons of outboard gear, racks and racks and racks and racks, and it's all eye candy, and ooh, cool compressors and cool EQs and whatnot. And then you watch, the people, and I'm like, oh, you're not using any of that stuff. Nah. I don't know. It seems like a waste. I don't know how to use any of it, so for me, it blows my mind anyway. But it seems that where we're at these days, the digital it makes life so much easier for people. I wonder if it's becoming a crutch.
Oh, there's no doubt that anything that makes life easier can become a crutch when abused, and there will always be people that abuse it. Absolutely, not really much more to say about that. I mean, it's just, you know what I mean. People will abuse things that are easily abused.
Sure. I like knobs and buttons and things that go clickety clack and tappity tap, and I feel like I can manipulate them, and my rudimentary recording skills being that they are, I get super frustrated trying to dial in a tone with either a mouse that I can't get that minute little thing to move, just that little skosh. Oh, it's super frustrating. But if I turn the knob, it goes right where I want it to go. So I guess I'm feeling nostalgic about the old days.
There's certain things in which will never be replaced, by a plug-in, and that's microphones. Although there are plug-ins that purport to take, microphone, third or fourth level tier microphone A and turn it into top tier.
Yeah, turn it into the $10,000 Neumann
B. I don't put a lot of stock in that.
Yeah.
And mic pre's themselves, a good mic pre. If you got those, you can. Those are your primary tools right there. There's your source, your space, the way those two things interact, and then there's where you put that microphone, what microphone you choose, and what mic pre you choose, and how you set it. And if you can get those few things down, and then perhaps, you're just way ahead of the game.
Yeah. Have you done anything as far as working with like signature Kemper profiles for yourself or anything like that?
I have not yet, but I am going to be doing that coming up.
Oh, what's the catalyst for that? Just deciding it's time just to try something new?
Being contacted by someone who thought it would be a good idea for me and laying it out for me, and then just sort of thought, okay. Yeah, because, there's a bazillion amp packs for deathcore and metalcore and slam and this, that, and the other, and, modern metal, blah, blah, blah. There's a bazillion amp packs for that, I want to do something that would be a little bit more skewed towards where I come from, what I bring to the table in that regard. So hopefully we'll see something in the coming months. I don't want to say too much about it.
Sure.
Don't want to spoil.
Don't want to blow it before it happens.
Spoil the soup. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Exactly.
Spoiling the soup. Yeah, I was talking to Jamie King not too long ago, and same thing. He's like, yeah, I recently started doing some of my own profiles, and he's like, it's really kind of changed some timing issues and made things a lot better. And Kempers being what they are, they're such a powerhouse in the industry anymore. It's hard to get away from them.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is there's just the economics of it. when it comes to touring, especially when you're, you know, cartage of your gear, or your transportation of your gear is can be a lot of money, especially on fly gigs. So, and there's just the ease at which, you set things up, it's really hard to, it is, like you say, it's hard to escape it.
Yeah. Well, our mutual friend, Mr. Ray Curry, recently I was talking to him about his relaunch, the Thrashing the Vault EP, which of course you were a part of, speaking of guest solos on Faceless Enemy. How did that project kind of come to you?
Just Ray contacted me. Ray contacted me and asked me if I wanted to play a guest solo on this song. And I was up for it. Doing guest solos is one of the things I do to earn my living as well. So, he offered me the opportunity to do it and to be paid to do it. And I was very happy to do that, to be able to put bread on my table, ply my craft, and to have fun doing it, and to make someone else happy, Ray and his band, happy with my results, and to then have, the people who listen to that album, enjoy it. It was just a great all around experience. And I even actually put a video on YouTube of me doing that solo. Yeah,
I saw it actually.
So you can
it's there on the interwebs. You can check it out.
It is. Go check it out on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, hey, there you go, James Murphy YouTube channel. So that project, when I watched the video, you just sit back with your guitar. Hey, I'm going to video this, and here's what's going through my mind. It was cool to kind of see the work in progress. How many, I guess, I don't know, drafts is the right word. How many versions of that did you do before you finally settled on the one that became immortalized on the album?
At that point, I was working exactly as I do now, exactly as I did when I recorded the solos for Spiritual Healing. I sit there and I play along with the part a few times. I start to get a couple of, some good ideas, and then I take those ideas and I arrange them into a little narrative, like tell a little story here.
Back to your story, yeah.
It's not a story. It's more a story of feelings, the vibe that it gives you rather than actual words. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not being literal. I'm being more figurative when I say story. It's more just about the emotion and vibe and flow of it. But that is what it is, even though I'm speaking, figuratively and there's not actual text. It's a story, and you put it together. So, and a lot of times the initial way I feel is sometimes exactly things will stay right where I first played them, because things work or don't work because of what chord is underneath them, usually, a lot of times. And so you can't just move something arbitrarily somewhere else. The same chord has to sort of be happening. So a lot of times it sort of falls into place really kind of in order, and I might move it around just a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that a lot of times, when I would play back in the day, when I would tell myself I was halfway decent, I'd play something out, get a first take out of it, and be like, all right, that's pretty good, let me go try it again. And then subsequently, I was almost always happier going back to the first couple takes than the 10 or 20 takes down the road. You just overthink it or something.
You can absolutely overthink. Yeah, you can overthink big time. And I don't recall that being the case with the Outlier solo. I think it came together really, really quickly for me. I don't remember that Faceless Enemy solo being one that gave me too much trouble. That some solos I just beat myself up over getting them down, and but a lot of times those ones that have just come somewhat easily to me are the best ones, the ones that I like the best years later. And I still occasionally will, as I'm doing some maintenance on my YouTube channel, will come across that video and I'll watch it occasionally. Every few months or so, I'll give that thing a spin, and I still like it every time I listen.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's awesome. It's got that little tasteful bit of whammy there in the end of it, and it's obviously got your signature sound, if you will. So props on that. It was funny how, because it was done so long ago and then kind of brought back out, and then of course there you are again. Oh, hey, look, this is what happened back in the day, and now it's new again. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you were going to go back on tour, say tomorrow, right? Because, we all know that's going to happen. And you could only bring one amp, one cabinet, one effects board, and one guitar. What are you going to bring with you?
One amp, one cabinet, one guitar. Well, the guitar would undoubtedly be
your comparisons.
My comparison Tat Special. Yeah,
okay.
I bring one of my comparisons, probably the Tat Special, because it's probably the most versatile. In other words, that I can play for everything that I do.
Right.
Because it does have. Some of my comparisons, I don't have a bar.
Right.
I do a lot of bar stuff in my solo playing. So if I could only have one guitar, it would have to be one with a bar. So it would be the Tat Special. If I actually took a physical amplifier, it would probably be my 5150 Mark III.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, that's a
the
beast.
EVH 5150 Mark III. And the cabinet would be my Mesa loaded with V30s.
Okay.
It's one of their oversized cabs. I think it's sort of the standard Mesa size, but it's oversized compared to like Marshall cabs or something. They're a little bigger. It's a little bigger than those.
Right.
This is a nice straight cab loaded with V30s, and it'd be that in the 5150. Now, if you hadn't asked me specifically what amps I would take, I probably would say I would just take a Kemper.
Take the Kemper, yeah. Well, yeah.
Because let's compare the weight of the Kemper versus, but I would be playing profiles made with that amp and that cabinet.
Right.
I would make the profiles myself with that amp and that cabinet.
So it's not really cheating.
So it would be my sound. Absolutely, it'd be my sound with my 5150 Mark III and my Mesa V30 cab.
And if you weren't taking the Kemper and you were going with all your old school gear, what kind of effects are you going to bring with you?
Well, the only effect that stayed with me from the very beginning, the very first pedal that I ever bought, I bought it probably in 1984. Before I even really consider myself having started playing very much. I asked for guitars for Christmas and birthdays from the age of 8. My father would never get me one. My mother could never afford it. My father would just never do it. So I got my first guitar in 1984 when we were living in Germany, and I was what they call an army brat. My dad was in the military, and I was going to school in Germany, but it was an American school, but a bunch of kids just like me, other army brats. And we had our summers. With the summers, the Department of Defense over there ran a dependent youth employment program. So if you were a military dependent youth, you could apply and get assigned a job for the summer and get paid. And I did that, and I saved up all my money. And I think I did that for 2 summers in a row and saved all my money and squirreled it away. And finally, at some point in 1984, I went down to a little music shop in Gießen, a little town nearby where I was living. I was living in a smaller town called Butzbach, and there was a bigger little mid-sized city called Gießen nearby. I took one of the Army-operated buses over there to Gießen, and I walked off the base and went on to what we refer to as the German economy. So I went out off the base. I didn't want to shop at the base. I went to a German store, and I bought myself my very first electric guitar, and I bought myself my very first guitar pedals, my very first guitar pedal, and it was an Ibanez TS9.
The Tube Screamer, yeah. And that was, you had an Aria Pro, right? Is that what you bought? The guitar was an Aria?
An Aria Pro 2, Aria Pro 2 XX Deluxe.
Nice. We've all had
Black Flying V with a yellow lightning bolt. Woo!
Awesome. And the Tube Screamer. Do you still have that Tube Screamer?
Yeah. And that Tube Screamer was the victim of something over the years, and I don't really even remember what happened to it. But I bought Tube Screamers all the time back then. I had very shortly after I bought that Tube Screamer, that was the TS9. They came out with the TS10, like probably the next year, and I bought that. It was my second pedal, TS10, and I do still have that TS10. I got it right there in the next room. And in fact, you can see one of those pictures of me from 1989. The pictures that I took of Chuck sitting on a stool in Morrisound recording Spiritual Healing. And if you look down at his feet, you see a little green box, and that's my TS10.
That's your TS10. That's killer.
Yeah.
And so is that the pedal you take with you then? That's your tour pedal?
It's pretty beat up. It's got some problems now. It likes to still works, but it likes to push cables out in the back. And it's not easy to work on because those were done on PCBs and they were, not an easy pedal to work on. But, since then I have a huge tube screamer collection. So I would bring some kind of screamer with me, possibly my TS-808 reissue from several years back. I probably bought it a decade ago or something. I don't know. Probably that pedal. Now, if that wouldn't really cover the rest of the effects I would need, because you need a little verb and some delay for solos. You might need a little compression for clean parts. You know what I mean? So I would probably want a compressor. Probably want in addition to the tube screamer, I'd want like a compressor. I'd want a delay. I'd want a verb, and I'd want a boost. Which the boost would probably be the Exotic Effects EP booster. I have that, and I love that. And the verb would probably be this off the top of my head would probably be the MXR reverb, the M300, I think it is. Love that guy. And delay, I don't know. Probably get like a Strymon timeline, something like that. Something I could.
The bad boy.
Yeah. The Strymon timeline.
Awesome.
I love like the carbon copy. The MXRs, copy, that's fantastic. I love a lot of those pedals. But
nice.
Yeah, but I have a massive pedal collection.
I bet.
Massive pedal collection.
They look good in the studio. I have a bunch of them too, and I just never use them. But they sure look cool, and I get happy faces when I look at them. Like the guitars that I don't play.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, well, look who I'm talking to. I'm sure your collection far exceeds mine. So awesome. Well, hey, listen, let's get to a couple quick listener questions. And
absolutely.
From Peter Dixon, who is a fellow GIT student, didn't you go to MI at some point?
No, I moved to Atlanta with the intention of attending AIM, which at the time was affiliated. It was considered a sister school.
Got it.
Of GIT, of MI when it was still called GIT. They had AIM out in Atlanta. So I went up there to Atlanta, and that's the time period during which I jammed with the Hallows Eve guys.
Got it.
That's all we ever did was jam. We never played shows. We never recorded anything. But that was right before I got the gig in Death, actually. So
yeah, one of those guys was your roommate, wasn't it? One of the Hallows Eve guys?
Yeah, Dave Stewart from Hallows Eve was my roommate. Yeah.
Crazy. So you never actually ended up going to MI. But
no, it was expensive.
Right. Awesome. So, but Peter Dixon says, of all the people you've played with, whether or not it's been in bands or, studio work or whatever, what musician did you think that you had the best relationship with as far as working with them? There's a lot, I know.
No, really hard because, there's just sort of, if I make it just specifically to like writing music,
sure,
putting music together, it was absolutely Chuck Schuldiner.
Okay.
We wrote music together really well, really easy. It just flowed. We weren't struggling. We weren't pulling our hair out. We weren't pacing. We were just like, let's try this. Okay, let's try this. You got a part? Oh yeah, I got a part. Oh, that fits. Okay, great. It just flowed. So probably Chuck when it comes to just, overall, just sort of, hanging out, having fun, and having fun playing together on stage and just having fun hanging out, in the down times even,
sure.
Probably Stevie D.
Yeah. Steve DiGiorgio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that, Peter. Appreciate that. All right. And Chris Heap, who runs the Heaps of Metal pages, wants to ask you, what musicians specifically influenced the direction you decided to go musically with like death and thrash? Was there any particular one or two that kind of really said, I really want to do it like this guy?
Death, Scream Bloody Gore was a big factor. It absolutely was. I was a huge fan. And I liked Leprosy as well when it came out. I was a fan of those. But I was just that kind of kid who, grew up initially in the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. And so I was listening to my dad's 70s rock collection.
Well, death metal wasn't around back then.
And then I started getting to not at all. So I moved into like Kiss and then Rush and then Black Sabbath So you can see I was steadily getting
heavier and heavier
more
and heavier,
intricate
yeah.
and more or heavier. And I followed on and I found out, the Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and then all of a sudden Venom.
Yeah.
What? What's this? This is crazy. And then what? Okay, then Metallica and Megadeth started showing up, and Slayer, and I just always craved heavier and heavier. Then bands like Creator and Destruction started popping up into my lexicon there, and I just kept, I want more and more until I got hit with Scream Bloody Gore, and then Leprosy. So it was just a natural progression. And for every band that I named at each stage of that process, there were 10 or 20 more bands. So it's hard for me to pick out one and say this was the one. It really is. But that was the progression. I hope that answer is a sufficient substitute for the one he was actually looking for.
I'm pretty sure Chris is okay with that. Thanks, Chris. All right. He goes by the Facebook handle of Paul Bearer, otherwise known as Paul English in real life. Paul wants to know when you plan on publishing a cookbook with Kristen, and he says that he'll be the first in line to buy a copy and wants to hire you as his professional chef.
Oh, yes. My fiance is quite the cook.
Yeah.
She's amazing, and there's a reason why everyone else can't see this. You're the only one looking at me, but there's a reason why I'm framing it about this high up.
Well, you notice my frame.
I've gained some weight.
My frame looks like your frame, so I think we're playing the same frame game.
Yeah, I've gained some weight, and because she is such an amazing cook, and I want to see her do that book too. I would only be contributing to one recipe, the buffalo chicken sandwiches, which I'm making tonight very shortly after we get off this interview.
Oh, in honor of Paul.
Yep. And but Kristen will be happy to hear that that question popped up.
Yeah.
Because she's, she loves to cook, and she loves when people appreciate it.
So buffalo sandwiches for dinner tonight. Cool. One more listener question, and this is from Joe. When you were putting together your 2 solo albums, and between that time and the Disincarnate, how did you decide what would become solo material, and how did you decide what would become Disincarnate material?
Well, it was pretty easy. I wrote the Disincarnate album, I probably wrote I think 4 of the songs almost completely by myself, and then the rest of them I collaborated with a couple of my band members, Jason and Brian, and those songs were all written in 1992.
Okay. And
I did not write a note for my first solo album until 1994 or 95. I think 94.
Okay.
I started writing it.
So it hadn't been kind of stewing around in the head. It just kind of was like...
No, they were separated by a couple of years.
Right.
But I think also, even if they had happened at the same time, I think it's not that hard stylistically to draw a line between them. I think there's a clear, not just a dividing line between them, but a nice buffer zone.
Sure,
it's a pretty big buffer zone between the kind of riffs that I and we wrote for Disincarnate and the type of things that I wrote for my solo albums.
Yeah. Well, and Disincarnate was really designed as a band, if you will, correct? Whereas your solo stuff was probably just more pet passions and wanting to just do something different.
Yeah. Originally, Disincarnate was always written to have vocals, and my instrumental stuff I had always intended to be all instrumental. It was really Mike Varney at Shrapnel's idea to make the albums half and half with vocals and half instrumental.
Sure.
So
yeah, awesome. And then of course you had Chuck rejoined you, Chuck Billy to do a track for you, which was pretty cool. Yeah, he did one track on each of my solo albums. Absolutely. Yeah, amazing.
I got Devin Townsend did a couple of tracks on my first solo album. And I had some cool guests.
That's awesome. Who was the first guest you reached out to? Just a rabbit hole there.
I think it was Chuck Billy.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I think he was the very first person I reached out to.
Cool. Well, I guess I'm going to throw myself on the fire, on the pile of Ask James This, but your Facebook profile still says manages Disincarnate. Is there still some Disincarnate to manage?
That is the plan. That is the plan.
Yeah.
However, there's a little something that I'm going to be doing before that.
Oh.
That I'm working on now. It's with a different bunch of guys, and it's been I would say that I think it's probably premature to talk about it. It's not a big secret, but I'm doing a project with a couple of other guys from bands that the lineup is not completely set in stone yet, because there's at least one spot that we haven't really got the confirmation yet. But we're gonna do a cool album together of old school death metal type stuff.
Oh.
And that's just going to sort of be my bridge into getting to working on the next Disincarnate, because I just want to see what comes out of me on that project. And trust me, if I come up with a riff that like, okay, this just reeks of Disincarnate, I'm going to set it aside and not use it on on this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, basically, I probably should mention it. I think what this project is. Currently, it's me, Paul from November's Doom on vocals. Another guitar player looks like it's almost certainly going to be. He's confirmed that he wants to do it. Is Ken Bergeron, or AKA Ken Sorceron from Abigail Williams.
Okay.
And there's another person who I don't want to mention yet, because there's the drummer who's Larry, who also plays in November's Doom, and there's a fifth guy, a bass player, or fourth guy, fifth guy, bass player that is not 100% confirmed yet, so I'm not going to name him.
Sure.
If he comes through, it's going to be really awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be just a very cool little project. We're going to play some original old school death metal type material, and for the time being, anyway, we have a working title, a working name that we're probably going with. It's just called Bloodverous. It's like carnivorous.
Okay.
But blood is spelled like blood's spelled with one O with a hard line over the top of it.
Okay.
Dash over the top. So it's called Bloodverous, and we're going to see what we come up with, man. See if we can throw some cool stuff out there.
Oh, that's killer.
And this is going to be the project to kick me in the ass and to bridge over to me doing a new Disincarnate. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm sure after, time goes by, it's hard to kind of sometimes relive that stuff as much as you want to. You've got to be in the right frame of mind, the right time, and everything like that. So
yeah, I really want to get myself in the right frame of mind. There's a couple of things that I want to happen first. So one thing I would really like to happen first is I'd like to get a hold of the multi-tracks of the Dreams of the Carrion Kind. And unfortunately, Roadrunner currently doesn't actually know where they are.
Oh, yeah, because you didn't record them yourself.
So I want to get those tapes. Probably have to bake them a little while and get them transferred over to digital.
Yeah.
So, and there's things I want to do with that. Things that will sort of help us get back in the mode, back in the swing, and help us build up to doing it.
Yeah.
In the way that I really want to. So we'll see.
Whether or not it's Disincarnate, or whether or not it's your amazing new Bloodverous Passion project, will these be just studio albums, or do you see a show down the road here and there?
I can absolutely see us doing shows, particularly things like festival runs, and like 70K.
Yeah. Oh man, that's just the dream gig right there.
I can see us doing that stuff. Do I see us, packing into vans and doing a 30-date, eat shit and die tour? Probably not so much.
Yeah. Well, that's a great name for a tour.
But we do want to get out there. We would like to get out there and play, but it would probably be more like you would have better luck catching this at a festival than at your local metal bar.
Sure.
You know.
Now, well, you know, never say never. Looks like there's tons of cool stuff.
I will definitely never say never.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, what's the next project that we can expect to hear from you? What's coming down the road that's going to have your name attached to it that we might hear out there sometime soon?
Yeah, I don't know. Tiwanaku is going to be on Transcending Records.
Okay.
The new Tiwanaku album is Ed Mowry, who back in the day used to be in I think he was in Nocturnus for a while.
Okay.
But he's got his own band now called Tiwanaku, Tiwo. I want to say. Oh, good grief! I can't even think of. My apologies, Ed. I am not 100% sure how to spell Tiwanaku. But look for Ed Mowry.
Okay.
And you will find it. Mowrey. And he's recently signed a deal with Transcending Records, and so that is going to end up out soon. I'm doing a guest solo on that coming up here, and I'm mastering a number of things. So I don't know. I don't know the order that things are coming out.
Sure, fair enough. You've got a lot of stuff on the cooker, though, for sure.
Yeah, I've got a mix booked with and I hate to admit this, but I got a mix booked with a band from Switzerland that I don't even remember the name of right now. So they're probably not going to be happy with me right now. But some of this is work that comes to me through another producer. So
I'll release this episode in Switzerland last, then, just to give you a little extra time. So
there you go. There you go.
Hey, well, if somebody wants to collaborate with you, or somebody wants to hire you for some guest solos, or somebody wants you to work some amazing mastering guru magic, how do people reach out to you? What's the best way to get you involved in a project?
Well, I am available for pre-production, production, engineering, mixing, mastering, guest solos, session guitar work, all of the above, reamping. I'm available for all of that, and you can reach me at my Facebook page. Pretty easy to find. I think it's just facebook.com/James Murphy Producer, I believe. You can also contact me through my studio page, which is set up like an artist page, I guess, on Facebook, and it's called Safe House Production. So you can find me there, and you can find me on the Instagrams, the Twitters. I think I'm James F. Murphy on Twitter. I don't do a lot of Twitter, I got to be honest.
Yeah, it's a mess.
But Facebook's really probably the best way, or you can just email me at jfmguitarist. It's my initials, James fucking Murphy. Guitarist. Yeah. Actually, my middle name is Franklin, so it is jfmguitarist, all in one, at gmail.com. So jfmguitarist at gmail.com. I also have the Hotmail and the Yahoo, so if you screw up and do the wrong one, I'll still get it. And so email. That's another great way.
Outstanding. Well, anything else that you want to plug before I let you get back to your life for the day?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, your head's full of stuff, that's for sure. So
yeah, it is. It is. It is. I hear it rattling around up there all the time.
You've been way more than generous with your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this with me today, and congratulations on your career and all the cool stuff you've done. Looking forward to hearing all the projects you're going to be involved in, and who knows, down the road we see some new material from you, and I'll be looking forward to that as well. So,
awesome, man. Thanks so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, James Murphy. Well, there you have it. An epic conversation chock full of historical and educational nuggets of awesomeness. I encourage you all to listen to James's solo material. Seriously, you know, we didn't get a chance to get into that topic as in-depth as I had originally planned, but do yourself a favor, check out Convergence and check out Feeding the Machine, and you'll get a true feel for the level of talent and dynamic diversity that only begins to scratch the surface of what James is capable of. And of course, thank you all so much for listening. I definitely appreciate it. And if you like what I'm doing, don't forget to subscribe to the show. And more importantly, please invite your friends to like the Misery Point Radio Facebook page. That would help me tremendously, more than you can possibly imagine. And now, I'm going to leave you with the song off of James's first solo album, Convergence. This one is called Shadows Fall.